Woohoo! We are live.
Oh,
yes, let's do this, baby. Episode 3.
It's so much excitement. I love it. VJ knows how to bring the energy.
I feel different now that we're live. I feel it in my body. So.
Yeah. Before we were not live. Now we are live.
Live and live. Speaking of live,
the birthing process.
I have to do our. I love it.
I'm still freaking out.
Hello.
I'm still freaking out over my AI generated teeth there.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I need to update those.
Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to episode 3 of the Bitbrains podcast. We're so excited to come live to you here today again. So we're going to talk a lot about the new stuff that's going on in crypto. And so one of the interesting things that's been going on is, as it relates to liquid staking, is a protocol called EigenLayer. They actually attracted around 45,000 ETH in around 12 hours, which is a pretty big deal. So we're going to unpack that and kind of discover what's going on there. What is it? What is EigenLayer? Maybe what's kind of behind it with liquid staking. And, this is something that should really demand any of your attention. So I'll throw it out to the group. So what do you guys think about EigenLayer and what they did to attract 45,000 ETH in 12 hours?
Maybe before we dive into that, for those of you who are watching who don't know what the heck EigenLayer is essentially a protocol, and it modifies the Ethereum base layer and allows validators to rehypothecate. We'll revisit that. Their Ethereum stake to validate other protocols simultaneously in parallel, right? So what does it mean? It means that taking the Ethereum that you already have staked and which is earning some kind of returns and using that and in other ways for being able to validate other protocols, right? And all of it is happening in parallel. So that's what EigenLayer is trying to do. It's a very innovative innovation. It's by the CEO was a professor at University of Washington, I believe, and doing a lot of research into distributed systems. So that's what EigenLayer is. Lido is one of the protocol where you can stake it, and then you can stake that Ethereum and you can use it to validate other protocols, such as oracles and other other providers, and you can earn returns from it, right? There are two types of staking. Staking is an overloaded term. We have security staking, which is what happens in Ethereum layer, where you are staking as providing security to the network, and you also have economic staking, wherein which you can stake some of your tokens in a lending protocol like Aave or Compound to be able to earn returns, even though both are called staking. One is security staking, another one is economic staking. What EigenLayer does is it can take your security staking Ethereum or security staking asset and be able to leverage it as a way for being able to provide economic staking.
Economic staking.
But essentially, like, the big problem and the big question that this arises is essentially a term of neutrality. And that is specifically if, like, are we actually creating a risk when we're doing this staking? And the way that this would work, or at least this is what it could be like theorized that it could work, is that right now, like, all the Ethereum that is staked on Ethereum, essentially it's specific to Ethereum, and it works under social economic consensus. If the community restakes it essentially into other protocols, like, they would in a way divert from like the original like purpose, which is to secure the Ethereum network, and there might be conflicts of interest that might happen in the future. But so from data that I was seeing, so essentially they got around 35,000 Ethereum that are staked with them now, which is around 70 something million dollars, right? I think that it's not yet like a problem, because if you look into the big numbers of how many Ethereum are staked in the network, so you have over $33 billion of Ethereum staked. So it doesn't really move the balance that much. And maybe we can go, Michael, we can think about some of the reasons of why they got so many Ethereum so fast. But I mean, that's a little bit of the controversy around it.
But
So they raised about $50 million, and for a Series A, they are backed by some very interesting investors. And they initially had only, I think they started with 1,000 or so, allowing only 1,000 Ethereum to be staked at the beginning. And then from 1,000, they increased it to 30,000. And when did it launch? Like 4 or 5 days ago. And within like, a few hours, the 30,000 got filled. And then they increased the cap again, and 45,000 Ethereum also got filled. The issue is not right now what's happening. It's a very small percentage. However, if this becomes a way in which people are taking their Ethereum and restaking it or rehypothecating it, then if there is any issue at eigenlayer itself, it's going to be a bigger issue for all apps protocols that are running on the Ethereum chain. And Vitalik, he had a blog post about it, and he warned against using the Ethereum consensus layer for being the consensus layer for other protocols.
So a quick follow-up on that, Vijay. So just so I can understand it better, and maybe anybody who's listening to understand it better. But so how does eigenlayer compare and contrast to, say, Lido? Is it a building block on top of it? Is it a liquid staking building block beyond it, or is it essentially doing what Lido staking is doing?
Yeah. So there are there are multiple layers to it, right? So first, imagine you are a validator. To be a validator, right now you need 32 Ethereum for you to be able to stake, right? So when you stake it, and if you're staking in the beacon chain, there was no way to remove the staked Ethereum, but now there are other ways in which people can go and stake it and remove it. So that is the base layer of being able to stake and provide security to the Ethereum network. Ethereum recently switched over from proof of work to proof of stake, where you are not spending all this computational power for securing the network. Instead, you're using another kind of consensus algorithm, which relies on people contributing certain amount of Ethereum, in this case 32 Ethereum, and one of the staked node gets randomly selected to validate it, right? So if that node is getting selected to validate a particular block, then the block gets written, and anyone else can disprove it, which becomes much more of an efficient mechanism for providing consensus to a network, right? So that's what proof of stake in a nutshell. And you have protocols like Lido and Rocket Pool and others who provide a liquid staking mechanism. What does it mean? What it means is that if you have your staked Ethereum, now that Ethereum is staked, you won't be able to easily unstake it and move it around. So instead, they tokenize the staked Ethereum, and others can then be able to and create a synthetic asset, right? It's a staked Ethereum, and each staked Ethereum, which is a synthetic asset, is actually backed by an Ethereum that is staked. So you have this synthetic asset that is backed by a staked Ethereum, and this can be traded. So that's what liquid staking protocol is doing. They are creating a derivative of the staked Ethereum to be able to provide liquidity or be able to easy to move. That makes the process of staking and unstaking easier, or being able to transact a percentage of the staked Ethereum, right? Say you just want to move 1 Ethereum instead of being able to unstake all your 32 Ethereum. With the staked Ethereum with Lido, you can just be able to transact that 1 Ethereum, right? So we talked about the first layer of Ethereum staking. Second is people like Lido, Rocket Pool. They provide a mechanism for stake, and they create a synthetic asset. Now, what EigenLayer is doing is you can work with staked Ethereum, and now they are working with protocols like Lido for being able to take that and use that to earn further yield and further returns.
Beautiful. Okay, so it's almost like a yield farming optimization above, a layer above Lido then, correct? So fantastic. So also, it appears that there is also an upcoming airdrop as it relates to EigenLayer. Is there anything that you guys, go ahead. Oh, you're going to say, Mariano?
Essentially, I mean, that's my theory over like why are there so much staking like happening with them so fast? Because what the last months in the market has been is a lot of people just searching for and everywhere for opportunities to farm airdrops. And I think this started after the Arbitrum airdrop that essentially confirmed like, hey, it's actually possible. Like if you look into these protocols and if you participate on them early, like you might get rewarded in the future. And I think something like that happened. I think it's a mix of like institutional investors that they actually want to experiment with this and to test it to earn additional yield. But I believe that some of them at least is people trying to participate for the token in the future.
So effectively, you're saying that, okay, is it something that we should direct our attention to and prepare for the inevitability of an airdrop and farm it? Or is it something that doesn't really deserve our...
I mean, I am still not convinced that just like throwing all the darts and investing on every single protocol and use every single protocol that gets like released, it's a good strategy to farm airdrops, because it will essentially take a lot of time, it will take a lot of effort, and it will cost some money. In addition, that you might get scammed in a way because there are protocols that are not very reliant or they're still very experimental. And I'm not sure about like using them. I do believe that there are some like big names that will create an airdrop and there will be a big opportunity. For example, Layer 0, CK Sync on it's gonna be a good opportunity, and I believe I would focus more my efforts on those established networks rather than more experimental projects.
Got it. Yeah. So we discussed Layer 0 a little bit on the last episode. So for anybody interested in looking a little bit more into that, be sure and catch our recent episode on that. Kind of going forward, MakerDAO. MakerDAO's, their token actually soared I think it was like 28% this week, which was presumably due to a token buyback where they're gonna right around $7 million or $7 million of Maker token are going to get removed from the market next month. So, Maker hasn't really been in the news for some time. So this is kind of encouraging. And, we like to see token buybacks, really reducing circulating supply of their tokens. So it makes sense why the token price surged a little bit. What do you guys say about this? Is there anything for us to really, dive into here?
So MakerDAO essentially is not new. I think it was released in 2017. So it's actually an OG of the crypto space. And what ended up happening with most of the projects back then is that they had a very good period of time, probably in like the second or third bull run. And in 2018, they made a lot of money, and some of them they climbed up, and then they essentially like disappeared. But what I'm seeing with MakerDAO is that there is like still attempts to make it relevant essentially and to update itself to like DeFi of 2023. And I think like it's a good strategy what they're doing of buying back the token to of course like decrease the amount of circulation and to essentially I think like reward people that have the token and that have been like holding the token for a long time.
Excellent. VJ, you have any comments on this?
Yeah. So have a bigger thesis around how the crypto market is going to evolve. I do believe that crypto is going to be the world's first quadrillion dollar market, right? Quadrillion dollar is 1,000 trillion. And right now we are at roughly about a trillion or so in market cap. How do we go from a trillion to 1,000 trillion, right? How do we go from a trillion to quadrillion? And believe it's going to come from tokenization of real world assets. So tokenization of real world assets means to be able to take a real world asset, tokenize it, and make it available as a token and trade it as a digital asset. That is where the opportunity, in my opinion, is. And the narrative is RWA, or real world assets. So what happens specifically with Maker is that Maker issues a stable coin called DAI, and it's got a market cap of roughly about 4 billion or so, and 2 billion of it is backed by treasury bonds, right? And right now, treasury bonds, you can get treasury bond returning 5%. So imagine you have $2 billion, which is making a 5% on just T-bills, on regular old T-bills, very low risk. And I believe Coinbase also bought some of these treasury bills that are returning 5%. So Maker is generating all these fees. And so you have DAI, which is a stable coin. It's pegged to $1. And you have MKR, the Maker token itself, which is the token that benefits from all the fee that is generated. So you had companies like A16Z. They hold a bunch of Maker token. And they saw that Maker was buying all these treasury bond, right? It's another way of taking real world assets, RWA, and making them in a digitized format. But right now it looks like a stable coin. And most people don't even know that it's backed by treasury bond. And if you are generating 5% on 2 billion, it's a pretty good return. And you had companies like A16Z and others who bought a bunch of Maker token, which then created this frenzy for the price of Maker token to go up.
Interesting. So I had actually heard that most of DAI was almost like a proxy of USDC, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because most of what's underpinning DAI is actually USDC. So then do they own the treasuries directly, or are they owning it indirectly through Circle, through the backing of USDC?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the exact mechanism for how they are owning it. I do know that they were looking for other ways, right? When the whole Silicon Valley Bank collapse happened, every stable coin had some kind of an exposure. So Circle had some exposure. They had, if I believe it correctly, $4 billion of assets that were in Silicon Valley Bank. So even though DAI was supposed to be purely a crypto-backed stable coin backed just by Ethereum, they also added USDC, but then USDC had some exposure. So after that, they've been looking for other ways of being able to minimize single point failures. And they did end up buying the treasuries. And I'm not specifically sure about the exact instrument they used to buy these treasuries.
Got it. Well, regardless, if they're generating the yield that they are generating, that's highly encouraging for the proliferation of Maker, and that's probably why they've sustained themselves throughout this bear market. And they're, like Mariano was saying, they're seasoned veterans. This is an actual protocol that's been around for 7 years, I want to say. So it's been some time.
And DAI is it's still very important as a token. Essentially, DAI, I think it's actually the biggest stable coin that is actually decentralized to the full extent of the word. So with DAI, it doesn't have inside the smart contract, they don't have like a blacklist function, whereas USDC and USDT, they do have, meaning that if they want, not saying that they will, but if they want, they could totally freeze USDC on your wallet. And that's a common misconception that people believe that the tokens that you have, the ERC20 tokens that you have on your wallet are actually yours. You won't believe this, but it's actually not true. They are not in your wallet. They are actually supervised by the smart contract of that token. So since it's a smart contract, if they have the function to blacklist them, they will freeze the USDC on your wallet if they want to. And it's insane because you can think like, oh, but hey, I have my private keys. It's my token. And how is it possible? Well, they can do that.
They can, yeah. And from my recollection is when the whole SVB disaster actually occurred, that DAI actually fared fairly well. throughout that whole thing. So yeah, that's encouraging. Any other, I guess, comments or anything about this particular topic before we move on?
I got nothing.
Michael, I love it. Dude. Well, what's funny about that is it okay? So VJ, you must have been reading my mind, reading the tea leaves or something, because you started talking about this tokenization of everything concept, this thesis, which I completely agree with you. I think most of the people that are on this call will agree with you on that. Is that we see? I don't know about the quadrillion-dollar market. That sounds amazing, but the tokenization of everything is, it almost feels like that's just, we're on this kind of slow motion car crash in a good way, that where it's leading into this tokenization of everything model. And some recent news came out this week with OpenSea founder Alex Ohanian. He's actually backing a project called Americana, and that's actually a tokenized collectibles platform. So what they're doing is they're tokenizing high-end physical items like classic cars, right? So vintage cars, vintage shoes, any kind of collectible, maybe even baseball cards, things like that, fine art, everything in between. So this really seems like a brilliant use case for blockchain technology. We've been thinking about this, or seeing this as a use case for those of us that have been in the space for many, many years, as being an absolute no-brainer when it comes to the application of this technology. Now we're actually seeing it come to fruition. So the key is, is there enough demand? Are they going to be good at onboarding? And how is the user experience going to be? So how do you guys see this thing taking off?
I just noticed that Alex Ohanian isn't the founder of OpenSea. He's the founder of Reddit. I think David Finzer is the founder of OpenSea. But yeah, I think just by virtue of that guy's star power through Reddit, I think he'll be able to really make a big splash and actually bring attention to the luxury business. What's the company called again? That actually
Americana. Yeah,
Americana. I've heard of them a few times. I think with his star power, we'll see what happens. A lot of this stuff like fizzles off pretty quickly. It's a headline today and forgotten tomorrow. So it just depends on.
Yeah, forgive me, not the founder, but I do think he had some involvement in OpenSea. Maybe he backed it.
He probably backed it. I wouldn't be surprised. He gets into all the.
So nevertheless, his connection there, his connection to Americana, I think it may spell something. Right?
So we might see luxury goods on OpenSea then.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Hey, at the end of the day, it needs to have proper incentives for people to be able to do it, right? So what is the advantage of being able to tokenize all these assets? Like, it needs to have some kind of advantage or motivation, or make things faster, cheaper, last longer. It should have tangible benefits for user. And that is what is driving all that we are talking about, is that, right? What are the incentives? Airdrop is another incentive, what we talked about earlier for EigenLayer. How do you attract users? Incentives, right? You give them airdrop for being able to participate in the ecosystem. Maker, similarly, incentives. And incentives, what are the incentive that they had? They said that the money that they're going to be generating in fees, they're going to use that to buy back Maker and burn it. I think I saw some data around, I think like $82 million of Maker is what is going to be burned if the rate continues for this year, right? It's like $7.5 million a month, which will make the other Maker tokens more valuable. And that is the power of the incentive, specifically around tokenomics. Once you start changing the incentives in tokenomics, right, like what Maker did, then you have a lot of people at least willing to take a look at it because they are incentivized to participate in the ecosystem.
Wow, that's interesting you say that, BJ, because I didn't even know that the whole Maker thing was just, I thought $7 million one time, but what you're saying, it's more on a sustained kind of annual path where it's a continual buyback.
I think it's 0.7% of their supply a month. Yeah.
That's amazing. Mm-hmm. That's amazing. But you're exactly right. It does have to, show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome, right? That whole thing. So it's important that we understand, okay, yes, we now have an availability. We have a platform to be able to tokenize everything. But what is the incentive to use it, right? And so as I think about tokenization, I think about DAI, which is essentially a tokenization of a US dollar receipt, right?
Hmm.
So
no, this is more for like digital assets. So it's
correct.
like I want to have my like Lamborghini in
exactly.
Decentraland. Let's roll around.
So it's being able to show and establish provenance, right?
Yeah,
So being able to
I actually own this in real life.
exactly.
And people always be asking each other like, "Hey, do you actually own that?" And like they'll be like, "Yeah, bro." And then
I do think that when it comes to like tokenizing real world assets, and sorry to be the party pooper, there still needs to be like a more advanced regulation, because it comes back to the fact that maybe with digital assets, you don't really care to show like a proof that you are the owner of something. But with the real world assets, it's complicated, because the only person in charge of demonstrating if something is yours is actually the government, it's actually the state. So how do you prove that you own your house? Well, you have a document created by the government that says you own your house because this is the title of your house. How do you prove that you own your car? Well, you also have another title for the government that says, hey, this title says that this car is yours. And then those are like the important ones. Then you also have certain objects that you might not have like a title to demonstrate that they are yours essentially, but that they are still connected to your possession essentially, right? So my watch is mine, maybe because I purchased it in the past, but it's also mine because I possess it right now essentially. And I do fear that if it comes to like this tokenization of real world physical things, there's gonna be a disconnection between the actual like digital thing and the physical thing. And if that conflict arises on that, then essentially it's like an unrecognized digital item against like a recognized physical item that somebody else is owning, and that's going to be a part of a conflict in my opinion. I actually I got consulted here in Argentina to make two projects that was something like that. One was to essentially tokenize soybeans, so it would bring like additional liquidity to farmers, and another one was to actually tokenize like flip-flops, something totally unrelated. And when I look into the regulation, is that first of all, the government doesn't know what a smart contract is, and it's not like regulated because even if it wasn't a security, it's like it's not a tangible thing that you can create contracts on. And I fear that essentially like it's gonna take a while for governments to realize that maybe you can create certain types of contracts digitally on the blockchain, and that's more than that contract could be a smart contract essentially, right? Think that there are certain jurisdictions that they do not recognize things that you sign online, that they say like, hey, you need to actually go with a person that is recognized by the law, that essentially certifies your signature, and that's how we prove that you did that. Like if you present the idea of like, oh, I sold my car because I sold the NFT, which is essentially a picture of my car, they will laugh. I mean, and they won't acknowledge that as real.
Yeah, I think there'll be a transition basically. So at first people will just do it and the government won't recognize it. And when enough people do it, there'll be a turning point.
Yeah, but a lot of people will get scammed like that way, because like, let's say you sell me the NFT and then you don't give me the car, like I have no one to complain to.
It's going to be
right.
like
there is going to be a period. I think there's definitely going to be a transition period to that degree, right? So there, Mariano, you're right. Michael, you're right. There's going to be a period where a lot of people are going to get scammed. What it's going to take is it's going to take case law to catch up, right? So you're going to have to see actual cases being ruled on by judges that are actually that either validate the technology or invalidate the technology. And I think that'll eventually happen, and maybe it'll be jurisdiction by jurisdiction. It's almost kind of like cannabis, right? Now it's legal in this jurisdiction, but it's not legal in the neighboring jurisdiction, right? So you'll start to see that until the federal government gets off their rear end and actually figures it out and knows how to regulate it.
There is
it's a
legal solution, and at the same time, there is also, I feel, a potential technological solution that is possible. What I mean by that is right now there is a disconnect between the physical world asset and a digital world asset. How do you connect them both? If there is a way, I'm sure like a few people are working on it. If I have the keys to my digital wallet, and I can be guaranteed to own everything which is in the wallet because I have the key to the digital wallet. And what is happening right now is that the same mechanism doesn't transfer in the real world. If I have my key to the car, then I have ownership of the car. I have like at least the right to use the car for a certain period of time. And you have some kind of a way for being able to link the access ownership of the car, the use of the car to a key. And you can have regulations. Obviously, you have like a legal title for the registration of the car that gives you the ownership for the particular car. And whenever you sell the car, you have to transfer the title. That is the legal framework. I'm not discounting the use of the legal framework. However, in addition to that, if we have a mechanism wherein which the same way where the use of a digital key guarantees, or the ownership of the digital key guarantees the ownership of the assets in the wallet. Similarly, if we have a mechanism wherein which we have a hardware solution wherein which if we own the key to the particular hardware, we also have ownership of the hardware. And if that technology comes on, a lot of the issues in some ways will go away, especially when it comes to things that are currently secured by a lock and key. Things that are not secured by a lock and key, like what the example that Mariana was giving, the use of soybean, a tokenized soybean, that we still wouldn't be able to resolve that. But certain other assets we'll be able to resolve, things like cars and homes, things that we have a key for that could be addressed with a hardware solution.
So maybe in Argentina, they might have your flip-flops behind a lock and key, though.
I mean, so like provenance access, like a certificate to art and luxury goods. And whenever the metaverse comes back, you get a lot of your digital twins coming along. And I think
I do also think that there should be like considered like sales tax and all those things that I feel like people will think of this technology as a way to like go around that, when it's like there is going to be some accountability because you're doing a sale of something and eventually it will bite you one way or another. But I think there is, as of today, and I haven't seen many ideas in this area, there is an opportunity for like actually centralization. So the way that it would work is like, let's say that you want to tokenize your watch. Well, you can maybe send your physical watch, your physical device, to the to like a warehouse where they will actually mint the NFT for you, and you can burn that NFT and receive the watch whenever you want. But of course, up until that time, you can transfer it, sell it, send it to a friend, essentially that. So it would be like actual centralization, where of course you would need to KYC because there will be no other way. But theirs will be like a central authority that will be handling the physical items. And the only way to retrieve these physical items is burning the NFT.
What would make sense, or be even a better solution of that, would be the actual doing of that prior to the sale of the actual item, right? So if you could get whatever authority that is to effectively do that, now that'd be an extraordinary task because you've got all these different items from all these, you don't even know it's going to be a collectible until oftentimes after it's already on the market, right? So you got that kind of thing. But if there was a way to do that where you could do it before the actual item gets sold, now you're talking about, now you're cooking with gas, so to speak. So I think this is an awesome subject, the whole tokenization, everything stuff. So Michael, you look like you were about to say something.
Yeah, I remember from like back in 2015 when Adam Levine was showing me token concepts, and he actually wrote about how tokenization of physical goods like wine specifically is a really good use case, because people love to trade wine, and if you can get your case of whatever in advance or multiple cases, you could be creating a whole secondary market. People wait years to get certain wines that are being prepared. So I think that was pretty crazy. But all this makes me think about like all the lost Bitcoin out there. Like, how many physical goods are we going to see separated from their token over the years? It's going to be pretty crazy, I think.
Well, it's actually funny you mentioned that, because there's another topic that just came up, which was like there was about 116 million worth of dormant Ethereum that was pre-mined that has been dormant for 8 years that just showed activity in that wallet. So That's interesting.
Yeah,
there's someone that forgot they had that, and they will realize they're
Whoops,
very
I
happy.
forgot I had it. Sent it to Kraken.
What's that? What did you say, Michael?
I know. I just said like, whoops, forgot I had that. Sent it to Kraken. Like, then they send it all to Kraken, but it's not that much in the grand scheme of things. It's like what, $120 million. So that's not like, you see some of these hacks, or like, it's not like $1 billion. It's not going to move the market that much, even if he does sell it. But good for him.
I was seeing like statistics. You know how much money the MTGOX wallet has? The one that got the hacker.
No.
I think, well, first of all, we got to put this thing to bed. Is it MT Gox or is it Mount Gox? It's one of those uncertainties.
I like to say Mount Gox, but people sometimes don't understand me.
Yeah,
like,
Mount Gox. I think it's
Mount
called
Gox,
Mount
baby.
Gox. We can resolve this. It was originally, what is the Magic the Gathering exchange, right? Online exchange.
Yeah.
So it's MTGOX, and it became it can be MTGOX because it's Magic the Gathering online exchange, or it can be MTGOX Mount Gox. So
that's what it was. I didn't even know that.
It's a genius name. I really like that.
Also, all I knew it was ran by the guy named Carpellis, which completely ran it into the ground. So yeah, that's all I knew.
Well, because he knew how to run a card site, but he didn't know how to run an exchange.
Well, I mean, it's both fake money anyway, right?
Yeah. Right.
Oh goodness. So
Mariano, how much money is there in that wallet?
Oh
yeah.
Oh, I lost my train of thought. It was something like $3 billion as of right now.
There you go.
That's so it's like you could be like it could be the richest person of many countries, like with one hacking.
Wow.
He should have just stuck with cards and then tokenized them. He would have.
Yeah, with Pokemon cards, he would have made more
you
money.
Send your card to the platform. He like verifies and tokenizes. Anyways.
One of the many black guys on the industry that has happened time after time after time, where people think that, oh, well, that's going to kill the industry, and it never does. So I just remember how people were viewing the whole Mt. Gox thing, and how everybody thought it was going to be the death knell of crypto.
I thought it was over. I was in crypto for like 2 months at that point, and I was
but at the same time,
fun. kind of thing.
At the same time, people do think, oh, something is too big to fail. Like MTGOX cannot fail. They were processing like 70% of the transactions of all Bitcoin at that time. Like FTX, it's impossible to fail. It's just too big. Like they have a stadium. How is it going to fail? BitConnect, like they were $1 billion like market cap token. How is it going to fail? They're just too big.
It really is interesting, the kind of conditioning that we allow ourselves to fall under. And what you just said, oh, FTX is too big to fail. I mean, they got a stadium named after them.
They got a stadium.
Right? We've arrived now. And so I heard so many people place trust in a central intermediary, right, in this last cycle, whether it be FTX, Crypto.com, Celsius, you name it, right? They place their trust, their money, in the whole purpose of the system. The whole purpose of blockchain is so that it's trustless ownership and self-custody of your assets. And so yet people are placing trust in these centralized intermediaries, and they go completely bust. I just find that to be so very interesting, and how that works, and how people continue to do this. And you had said it, you used the word, Mariano, trust, right? Cycle after cycle after cycle. People place trust in Mt. Gox. People place trust in Binance. People place trust in FTX, Celsius, you name them. There's a dozen other ones. And so here we are now. We are in a trustless environment. This is a trustless technology. It's all about self-custody assets, and the people that are really remaining that, maybe your assets are down 60, 70, 80%, but if you still have ownership, and if you still have custody of your assets because you understand the fundamental underpinning of the whole technology, then you can at least resurrect your portfolio rather than someone who had their assets in FTX that's never going to see it again.
Yeah, I've got wiped out enough times to learn that lesson. Not your keys, not your coins, right?
Yeah.
That's why there's the meme.
The only way.
Absolutely. So, now on to more serious news. Elon tweeted about Dogecoin, and it popped like 4%. So,
Nice.
I tried to understand that tweet, and I don't even get the reference. So
I think it's like people seeing things that don't even exist at this point.
Yeah, there you go. I like that. Okay.
It's like there's like reading between the lines so much that, it's like apparently, Elon is now QAnon for Dogecoin. It's like
just sell when he gets on SNL again.
Oh yeah. Well, that was the Pico top, right? That was the Pico top of Doge.
Yeah, that was the actual top.
Yeah,
that was the day.
That was the.
It was. I remember. The script that he was like talking. Was like, but what is it, man? And I was like, was this question of what is Dogecoin? And he was like, and at the end he said something like, "Oh, was it? Oh, it's a hustle," something like
that. I remember buying Doge because of the American bobsled team back in like 2014 or whenever that was for the Olympics. The Jamaican bobsled team. Correction, my bad. Yeah, do you guys remember when Dogecoin funded the Jamaican bobsled team going to the Olympics?
Yeah, there was a whole Reddit movement around it, and people were getting all excited. Yeah.
Yeah, super crazy. And I remember buying Dogecoin because of that, and ended up selling it at a 60% loss in 2015. So that was ridiculous. And that to see it eventually hit 70 cents. I don't know what the top was, but that's so crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, so a little more. I think I used to receive like Doge from something that it doesn't exist anymore that were called faucets. So faucets was a very weird concept where essentially if you click on a website, they will give you almost like essentially like little bits of Bitcoin and other coins for free, just to be there, just so you're there and you watch the ads. And I got like 25,000 Doge, which was worth less than $1, and then it was like, oh, this actually is worth something, and I sold it when it was like 10 cents or something like that.
Well, I have a friend that he was so early to the game that he was at the Roger Ver faucet back when Roger Ver had so much Bitcoin, right? He had so much Bitcoin that he realized that, wow, if I have this much of the supply, I don't remember how much he had. If he had that much, then he had to start giving some away to participants or to the market or to just other people. Otherwise, the market couldn't grow, right? As it related to Bitcoin. So those were super, super early days. I can't even remember how, maybe it was 2010, 2011. But yeah, I know friends of mine that went to that faucet back in those days and, claimed free Bitcoin. Just imagine that. What a mind, just absolutely.
Magic internet money is like, click and you will receive. Yeah.
It's like
and then nobody back in those days really knew that it was going to turn into what, I mean, if you like, even the big OGs of today don't even like, they look back and you ask them that honestly, did you know that Bitcoin was ever going to hit $60,000? Absolutely not. I think for a lot of people it was a hope and a prayer, but hey, I'll hold on to this. I mean, if it's like me, like I owned it, didn't know what I owned, held on to it for several years, then all of a sudden I needed Facebook to tell me that it was, up 16x or 20x or whatever it was. So
there are some OGs like Tim Draper who would say, "Oh, it's only 60,000. This is gonna be $1 million."
Yeah, but to be fair, like he took a lot of risk when he purchased Bitcoin. So he purchased it from an FBI cease. I think it was from actually like the Silk Road. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he bought confiscated Bitcoin, right? But I mean, that wasn't his first. That wasn't the first Bitcoin he ever bought, right?
No. I think that was the first time he bought like a big amount.
Okay, got it.
But I mean, yeah. I remember. I think I saw in an interview that the government essentially like categorized the auction, because it was an auction, as some sort of like perishable good, in the way like the same way that you should like auction like food, because if you don't sell it by this date, it will go to waste. Bitcoin had the same like label attached to it.
Is this when they were auctioning it off, or when is this?
Yeah, I mean when the state was preparing the auction, they categorized Bitcoin as a perishable good, essentially.
Okay,
that's hilarious.
They're like digital, perishable.
Shows you how knowledgeable we have people working at the state.
Unbelievable.
That's insane. So in other news, NASDAQ actually halted a plan for crypto custody service due to U.S. regulatory conditions. So this is a major U.S. traditional finance exchange kind of putting the brakes on it. So anything to see here, guys?
I guess nothing to see here.
Here. Okay. Fair enough. NASDAQ. Well, I find it like, okay, it's just a little bit interesting how to counterbalance that, right? So you've got pretty much in the same week or within the same 2 weeks, you've got BlackRock filing for an SEC, license for an ETF for Bitcoin, and then you got NASDAQ on the other side of that. I mean, they're both big Wall Street, institutions now, pretty much doing the opposite things, right? So that's where I find it a little bit interesting, is that whole dynamic where you've got just a little bit of contradiction going on Wall Street as it relates to the space. So my 2 cents. Yeah.
Cool.
And then, it must be a burning thing, with Maker burning, now BNB's burning. BNB chain's going to burn nearly $500 million worth of BNB tokens. Don't know if that's something to be considered of as well.
Wait, repeat that. BNB.
So yeah, BNB chain is burning nearly $500 million worth of BNB tokens.
Yeah, it's not a lot, but it's not. What percent of their supply is it?
That I'm thinking, well, what is it? Is it
their supply is 153 million?
Okay, so big deal.
But what's the market cap? Because it's in
I feel like burning's a fad now. It's like, oh guys, how do we get in like the news real quick?
Yeah.
So let's make a buyback. Maker's pretty good. Did they say exactly why they decided to do the 28% over? How long is it gonna be? Like 3 years, something like that.
Talk about Maker, right?
Yeah, Maker. Like, what's the reason they initiated it? Not. Does anyone know why?
VJ, do you know? Have any context in that?
I think it's because of all the fees that they are generating. They used to do the burn for a while, and they had put it on pause. They restarted it again, and I think it's because of all the yield that they are generating from the treasuries that they are holding. And BNB, they did change it. They used to have scheduled burn, and the burn they had. They were essentially taking the fees that are being generated in the exchange and giving it back to people. There are ways for returning the fees back to the owners. If you do it in the form of money going back, it's considered as a dividend, and then you fall under the securities law. And the way that BNB is doing is that they burn based on instead of returning the money back to the investors, they buy the BNB from market, thereby reducing supply, and they burn it. So it's another way of returning the yield back to the owners without it being considered security. And they were doing it on a periodic basis, but starting maybe a year or so ago, they have a real-time burn mechanism where all the fees that is generated in the Binance exchange and other running the Binance Smart Chain, you have a real-time burn of buying the BNB from the market and burning it. So that is one way. And they also do a quarterly, and the quarterly used to be done manually. Now they have also systemized it, where they burn the quarterly on every 3 months basis. They have a specific formula for burning on a quarterly basis. And it's a function of the price of the BNB combined with how many blocks of the BNB chain were produced, and also there is a way in which the fee generated on the exchange also flows back to that, and that is trackable in real time for how BNB is burning.
So it's just been part of their tokenomics the whole time. It's kind of not even really a headline then in that case, right?
It hasn't been always part of the token economics. They originally launched without this mechanism, and then they went and changed it. Again, it's interesting to see every single conversation that we are having boils down to token economics and what incentives people are having.
Mm-hmm. That is interesting.
I do find that
Tokenomics makes the world go round. I think. What was your quote, VJ, when we were first learning about tokenomics? It's the most powerful mechanism for
To
basically to inform human interaction, something like that.
Good job, Michael.
Yeah.
So
Actually,
you did a great job.
you had
that
something
close?
with godlike powers in there, VJ. You're gonna have to clarify it for us.
Yes. So my quote used to be, or my quote still is, token economics is the closest that human beings can get to having almost godlike powers to make massive societal change on a global level, right? And the way it is being done is by incentivizing the right people. For example, there is no VP of sales for Bitcoin. There is no sales force or marketing force for the Bitcoin protocol itself. However, you have people who have spent tens of billions of dollars setting up these mining operations around the world. Why? The network rewards people who are providing security. So the Bitcoin network, what the network wants, it wants security. And if anyone provides security to the network, they get rewarded. That is the power of incentive to be able to move, hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars from around the world, and putting so much of resources, so much talent focused on providing that particular service because they're going to get rewarded. Now, imagine if we can do for the biggest challenges that humanity is facing. If we can do that for education, if we can do that for eliminating poverty, if we can do that for climate action, if we can do that to bring gender equality, there is tremendous power, tremendous potential that could be unlocked using the power of token economics.
I think it's absolutely fascinating. I mean, it is exactly what is an underpinning of blockchain, right? So all the different communities, what do we look for as investors? We're looking for what is the incentive, right? Show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome. So you could have the best use case, you could have the best team behind it, you could have, best everything else. But if your tokenomics are maybe a dissipation of energy of where it could be actually create a great incentive system, no, it's not worthy of an investment. So is that kind of what you're saying, is that, like the tokenomics as an investor's perspective is supremely important because it essentially shows you the outcome of where that particular ecosystem is going?
Yes, I want to distinguish between blockchain and cryptocurrency. A lot of people take that and say, oh, no, this is what is foundational for blockchain. One component is the blockchain. The other component is the power of incentives, right? So you have all these big companies, we have a blockchain solution, but if you take away the incentive, it's almost, it doesn't have the same power and potential for being able to instill the same amount of people's participation, because you're removing the crucial component from the entire ecosystem, which is the power of incentive.
Ruby's got something to say there.
Yeah.
So now I think appreciate your explanation there, VJ, on tokenomics, because I think it's something that doesn't really get unearthed enough. I don't think new crypto investors really understand what tokenomics are and how important and pivotal they are in understanding. So thank you for that. Thanks for the awesome quote. So before we tie a bow on episode number 3, y'all, there's actually a new report out too from I believe it's Bitfinex, talking about some of the Bitcoin miners have been selling off and hedging, I should say, some of their positions, which, we can read something into it, we can read nothing into it. So I think this is all kind of my personal opinion. This is all part and parcel. I think it's great that they're hedging, right? We want to see Bitcoin miners in healthy, strong positions in times like this in bear markets. So, but I just want to get the feedback from the peanut gallery here on what are you guys' thoughts on Bitcoin miners actually selling off and hedging some of their positions?
Mining is a very low margin business operation, wherein which it's a race to the bottom, right? If someone else can get the cheapest electricity, if someone else can do some minor optimization, then people are trying to optimize it because it's a very low margin business. and you would need to run the business in a more professional manner. Until maybe 18 months ago, there was not a professional infrastructure available for miners to be able to participate in this entire financial ecosystem. And you had like Fidelity and others who have come in to finance these mining operations because they require tremendous amount of upfront capital expenses. And then you have your Bitcoin mining reward, which comes over a long period of time. Right now, it's challenging times, or maybe the last 6 months or so are very challenging times for all the miners. And a lot of miners have gone under business, and the remaining ones are people who are smart and being able to hedge their position. Right now, Bitcoin is around 30,000. And if miners who are launching today, if they can optimize for the price at 30,000, if they can just run the business, they would rather have the confidence for being able to run the business at Bitcoin at 30,000 than the potential loss that they'll incur for Bitcoin going down to maybe 20,000, offset by the potential upside for Bitcoin going to 40,000 or so.
Yeah, it's another thing that's interesting as you're seeing this, is as the sell-off is occurring, is that Bitcoin mining difficulty is actually, their hash rate, I believe, no, Bitcoin mining difficulty recently hit an all-time high. So you've got this kind of dynamic where if you're not optimizing, if you're a miner and you're not optimizing and you've got great power rates, you're operating at a loss. And like we've seen before or recently with a friend of ours who's a miner, that's kind of what he had mentioned, is that if you, it's getting really, really tight for a lot of miners out there that are actually now operating at a loss. And to your point, you mentioned that, you know, this last cycle, they were able to actually tap the financial markets, you know, do bond offerings and take on debt. You know, some of these now publicly traded miners are able to, you know, get money from Wall Street. Well, just because they're able to do that doesn't mean that they're operating efficiently. You know, if you're buying your equipment at when the equipment's at an all-time high and Bitcoin's at an all-time high, that's not necessarily a good strategy. But we saw a lot of miners that did that, and so therefore we've seen a lot of those miners go, you know, belly up. Some of them may still be, you know, rotting carcasses that are just still floating out there, and they just haven't necessarily went bankrupt yet. But nevertheless, it's something that we need to consider, I think, going forward. It's, you know, mining is an underpinning of Bitcoin, and Bitcoin's an underpinning of the overall crypto ecosystem. So it's really important that we pay attention to this.
Yeah, I just think it's really cool that it's like an incentive for people to find more optimized way to use power. So, you know, you have your miners going to like places where power is the cheapest, but then you also have miners like setting up their systems and operations beside power plants and taking excess power from the grid. So I think that's really interesting.
And storing it, right? I mean, it's a storehouse of power. It's a storehouse of energy, right? So that's what I think is very interesting, is how they're taking that excess power, Michael, that power that would just be not captured, now is being stored inside the blockchain net, or inside the Bitcoin network.
Yeah, I love that perspective. Actually, that's something I have to think more about. Just storing it. It's like,
yeah, it is. If you think about the US dollar is pretty much backed by oil, right? So US dollar is an oil-backed currency, whereas Bitcoin is backed by electricity, and it has the potential to be the first currency backed by electricity or power. And as technology, we are moving forward. Now, we used to drive cars that were running on oil, running on like petrol, to moving towards electric vehicles. Similarly, currency, which used to be backed by oil, will move towards being backed by electricity.
Beautiful. Yeah, I agree, Vijay. Absolutely agree. I think it's such an interesting dynamic that this, you know, proof of work was even created, when it was created. So, you know, we obviously, we love it. That's why we're talking about it week in and week out. And so with that, episode 3 is in the books here with the Bitbrain podcast. I want to thank you all for joining us, and feel free to comment below, like, subscribe, throw some comments in there, throw some questions in there for us to address on a following follow-up episode. And we'll see you on the next one. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Awesome. Bye, guys.